now we're going to introduce Jenny Bradley to come into the webinar. Jenny is the co-owner and operator of a mixed farming business in Central West New South Wales focused on prime lamb and wool production. And she also runs a seed stock breeding operation. Almost 10 years ago, Jenny implemented sheep eID for the seed stock arm of her business, and tonight she's kind enough to join us to explain the benefits that has brought to her operation. So I'd just like to welcome Jenny Bradley to the webinar.
Thanks, Cherie. Thanks
Hi,
for
Jenny.
having me on board. Yeah.
Thanks for coming. It's lovely to have you here. Look, we've just got a few questions to go through. So I will just start off with the first one. I was hoping that you'd be able to share with us all how you are currently using eID and what your plans are for the future.
Oh, thanks, Cherie. So we've been, as a seed stock producer and identifying the need to have 10 years into eID, as a seed stock producer, we collect a lot of data. Each animal is actually tagged at birth, and if that ewe remains within our flock for up to 6 years, that data collection points can vary from sort of 8 to 15 points per year. So eID forms a critical part of running our seed stock production. In particular, once you formulate your breeding objective, then those data points actually drive your breeding objective, and then you can work out animals that aren't performing, and then they're removed from that seed stock production system. So eID is really critical to our business, actually. Yeah, it drives it basically. And did you want to know future plans?
Future plans?
Future plans.
Because it seems like the sky's the limit.
It is, and it is, except I suppose my husband and I, we've been running that seed stock business by ourselves. So we run the mixed farm by ourselves until our succession plan came in to operation here 18 months ago. We had our son back on the farm, so he's identified lots of niches and improvement areas, and one of them last year was, why haven't we got eIDs in our commercial lambs that we're finishing to identify growth rates? And we just said, look, that's great, you've identified that, we're inundated with the seed stock and the data there, that'll be his baby, and he's quite keen to run with that in a finishing aspect. Yeah, I mean, identifying high growth rate lambs, low growth rate lambs in that commercial enterprise, and then you've got options, always options. When you've got that much information, you've got options to sell those low growth rate rams or sell the high growth rate rams and not finish them. Yeah, so that's his baby. He's gonna run with that. Yeah, so that's great. So the future's been good. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, look forward to seeing how that all goes. So I guess the next thing was, we're sort of wondering just why, you're an early adopter of eID. You've been involved in it now for almost a decade. Why did you adopt eID in the first place? Like, what motivated you to take that step?
Yeah, no glory stories here, I can tell you. And I always refer to it as like the 3 Ps. So people, paper, and paint, which is probably not paint, it's a spray paint. So particularly with people, and we have a lot of people in the yards, and collecting that data 10 years ago was actually visual tags and people reading them. So if you've got a tag, and we had a vertical swing tag 90 degrees from the animal's head, and incorrect reading, is it 611 or is it 911? And so it's a people error in collecting that in that number of that individual animal. Then paper, so then you've got someone recording that incorrect reading, which is probably recorded correctly but it's incorrect, or read correctly and recorded incorrectly. So taking out the human error is just been magic for us, because once you lose that or capture incorrect data on a breeding animal, a seed stock animal, and identify it, it's nearly worthless to you. And that animal it's quite often culled, and it could be a high performing animal. And then paint, I have a story around paint, like single sire mating. So the single sires have paint dots, spray paint onto them to identify them. And then the rams come out after 5 weeks, and then you've got Scanning. So then you've got identification with scanning, and there's early and lates, and there's twinners and singles and triplets and dries. And then you try and draft according to your dots, and it just becomes a nightmare. So those are the 3 Ps which have driven us to seek a better way of doing it. And eID was the better way of doing it. Yeah. And it's always a hold your breath moment when you first do it, with no paint, and you've been used to paint all over your sheep or spray paint all over your sheep. And then for the first time you scan or do your mating allocation without paint, and it's that hold your breath and, oh my gosh, I'm just letting them all go and they haven't got any paint on them. But it works. It always works. Yeah. Yeah. Just have faith when you're doing it.
Stuff. Okay, was also thought it'd be interesting to know, how can you quantify the value of using eID? Like, is there a way you can sort of explain that?
Well, yeah, and I think you've got a graph there, but
Yeah, we can bring those slides up.
and so that genetic gain, and I've just got an index there, which is just it shows an index gain. So that index gain equals dollars to us. So, and that index gain is a combination of lots of its growth, birth weights, maternal weaning weight, fat, muscle. It's all those traits put together into one index. So over a period of time there, basically from the adoption of eID, you can see that compared to the average of the breed, we're probably moving in a nice trending line upwards. There's a number of factors in there, but that capture and use of that data through eID has been one of the major key drivers of that trend. And if you go to the second slide there, I think there may be a few reasonings behind that. So that the biggest gain there at the end, we've used mate cell during that period of time. Now, mate cell's like I describe it as a Tinder program for sheep. It's a mating allocation. And I don't think you probably could do it if you had a lot of time and a lot of paper to do it. But eID makes it easy to adopt and use mate cell to gain the most genetic gain from your mating allocations. Using AI and ET, just tracking those individual animals and their progeny, it's just all assisting all the way through. So it is quantitative, you can measure it too. But yeah, without it, it would just be too difficult. Cherie, yeah.
That's really interesting. It's good to be able to see that, just that upward trend there that's come through just from being able to pick up different pieces of data, and then what you can do. So that, it helped you with your decision making of what you could do.
Yeah, it really does, because if you've got your breeding objective, which is clearly outlined and it's measurable, and then you're collecting that data, which is all measurable on that animal. And for instance, you take a growth rate. So you measure that lamb from birth, you take it a birth weight, and then you've got you've got a weaning weight, you've got an early post-weaning weight, a post-weaning weight. And if your breeding objective is really specific around those gains, then you can actually cull on that. But as I said, there's a lot of data points to be collected. The eID, individual identification of an animal, you can place all those data collection points against that animal. Remembering it doesn't go to the eID, it's only identifying the animal, but that data goes against that individual animal, and then you can use that to drive your business using your breeding objectives. Yeah, that is good.
Fantastic. Just wondered as well, obviously this is a new technology for a lot of people. How have you overcome any challenges that you encountered when you were in those early stages of implementation?
Yeah, and there's a number of challenges. And I mean, even it's as simple as, what tag do I use? And we've been through a number of tags. We've had tags and positioning. So there's the tag design in itself, and there's lots of manufacturers out there. And I suggest to anyone who's looking at eID tags and we're having to move that way, which we are all having to move that way, is to go and shop around and talk to other people who've been using them and find out what tags have worked for them. Even the positioning of the tag in the animals for retention. Retention is a problem with mob-based tags or an eID tag. So play around with the location within the animal's ear to keep retention at a high rate. Even applicators, and then the person applying the tag too. Have an induction program if you've got someone else using those tags. So tags are an issue, or a challenge, I should say. And the equipment, because nowadays, and 10 years ago, we traveled the country looking for particular equipment that was compatible with each other and equipment that would suit us for what we wanted it to do. So I suggest anyone coming on board to have a good look around, talk to a lot of people who are using that equipment and the tags, and find out what suits you best. And while you're out there too, look at how other people have even, if you're looking at going further to looking at auto drafters, look how they've situated them within their yards for animal flow as well. It makes it so much easier to use. So they're probably the main two, is your tags and the equipment. Because your equipment can be simple too, and it can be as complicated as you like too. There's so many things out there now that you can purchase. There's so many companies selling all the whiz-bang pieces of equipment. Make sure you shop around and have a good look and talk to other farmers.
Yes, I can imagine the market is flooding with lots of options.
Yeah.
I guess that leads into my next question, is around infrastructure, and what sort of infrastructure would producers need to get started? Like, just, you know.
And Dougal gave a really good introduction there. To be compliant, you don't need a lot of equipment, and you can, if you've got cattle, you can use just your wand and your computer. If you've got a computer at home that runs an Excel spreadsheet, there's your starting point for collecting data on commercial animals. So that's oh, sorry, I've lost my train of thought. So that's the basic need is basically a wand or a panel reader to start off with, to capture movement of stock in and out of your property. And as Dougal alluded to too, any stock leaving and heading to a sale yard or an abattoir, you don't need that equipment either, because they capture all that data and do the transfers for you. And if you're doing it property to property, you don't need that equipment either, because you can, if you ask nicely, your agent may be able to transfer all that data as well. But going back to a producer looking to adopt technology, so a wand, a panel reader, a computer, and an Excel spreadsheet, or there's a lot of programs out there that are designed specifically for collecting data. And if you want to go further too, there's actually service providers out there that do provide a fee for service on that data. They'll collect your data, analyze it, and then give it in a format that you want to, that suits your breeding objective as well, on a commercial basis too. Not necessarily just for seed stock, but on a commercial basis. So there's so many opportunities. It's a pretty exciting space to be in with a commercial adoption. And there are a lot of people who have already adopted it commercially and running with it. Yeah. And then, so we've gone further, of course, and auto drafting. We've got an auto drafter, but you don't need an auto drafter to go into a commercial business or enterprise and drive it. You can keep it quite simple. But within our business, we've found that that's been a great addition to our production and our seed stock. Yeah, and I think you might even have.
I think we've got a video. Let's see if we can get that to play, and then everyone can have a look at how that works.
So that's just our auto drafter and our computer program that's compatible with our auto drafter. And we've got, when we're doing any data collection, or any sorting of these sheep, there's probably 3 or 4 of us in the yard. So we can actually put in there, into that auto drafter, that we want to draft off anything that's carrying really high levels of fat and muscle. They'll draft them off. Pregnancy scanning status, they'll draft off. Remember, see, there's no paint on these sheep either. The data you enter is the data it will draft on, and it just makes life easy. It's actually taken a person out of the yards as well. It used to take 2 people to actually no more, actually probably 3. And now with an auto drafter, it takes one person in the yard to open the gate. The dogs haven't got thumbs, and they can't open gates, I should say. Yeah, so it's only a 1-person job, and it's works wonders for married couples working in sheep yards too. It makes life easy.
So I guess that's really good, Jenny. So I guess just are you able to put a bit of a cost estimate then on for a bait, like what producers are we looking at for sort of the basic wand setup versus something like what we just saw there with the auto drafter and, you know,
Computer and
the
so yeah,
screens and everything.
yeah. So a simple startup package, I would imagine if you wanted a wand, and wands do capture a lot of information, and they come with a spreadsheet that you can actually use as well, which you can adopt to your computer and use. They can start at anywhere from 1,800 to 2,200 for a simple wand reader. Most your computer, of course, is part of your business. Panel readers are a little bit more expensive. They're up to 2,200 for panel readers, and you can situate those at the end of races and the end of drafts to collect data on your tags. This particular one here, and you can actually extend that out to a 5-way draft if you like. So looking at probably $25,000 for that unit as it is there at the moment. But return on investment for us has been well worth that expense to do that.
Okay, great.
Our business.
Thanks, Jenny. I've actually got a question that's come in from one of our attendees at the webinar, which is great. This question is, what location in the ear have you found best to avoid tags being pulled?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we double tag one side with a visual, which is hanging. Actually, we've got 3 tags. One's a visual swinging tag, but the eID goes in the back of the ear, close to the head, not too close that the ear where the ear is not too thick, but it's over the halfway of the ear closest to the body. Yeah, and we're at the back of the ear, and that makes it actually. I think you might even be able to see that on that slide there. That ear going up the race there.
Do you want that video played again to show that?
Yeah, well, there's 3. So if you don't mind. So any young ewe that's coming, any older ewes coming through will have 3 tags. One visual, one very large white visual, which is a lambing tag. And then she'll have her eIDs closely attached to the offside ear, and you may not, so there's a couple coming through there now. So that closer to the head I find is the best for retention.
Okay.
Anything that puts their heads through the fence, usually the first thing out is the visual, and the eID is always retained. The visual is the one that rips out first, and the eID stays in, we've found. Yeah, if it's positioned correctly. So great question.
Yeah, that is a great question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's any others doesn't seem to be any more sitting there. We are pretty much out of time as well. But I guess, Jenny, one last question. Any words of advice for anyone out there who's, looking at this and going, what do I, I'm at the beginning, any advice, words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom, yeah. The starting point's always the hardest. Once you've made that, taken that deep breath and gone with it, just go with it, and it just becomes easier. Yeah, the more you use it, the better it is.